What's up, world? I'm Matt Newberg from HNGRY, and this is The Feed. Each episode, we'll dive into conversations with the industry insiders who are leveraging technology to shape the way we eat. On today's episode of The Feed, I sat down with Marc Wulfraat, founder and president of MWPVL International, a global supply chain and logistics consulting firm that advises large retailers on warehouse and automation strategies. In this episode, we'll dissect the various pieces of Amazon's global supply chain, its recent changes to its online grocery business, and the role of automation. Full disclosure, I'm a shareholder of Amazon stock. Thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. I would love for you to start by telling us your background and tell me how you got into the space of supply chain and logistics, and then kind of how you kind of came across Amazon and why you're so focused on them.
Well, in the mid-'80s, I graduated with a math degree, and the unemployment rates were over 15%, and it was hard to find a job, so I luckily managed to find one in a consulting firm that at the time was doing distribution center design, and worked my way up to partner level there and ended up starting my own company back in 2006, and I have been doing that since as a founder of that firm. And the whole Amazon work and project that's ongoing here was really an accident. I mean, at that time when we started it in 2006, Amazon was just becoming a household name, and they were very secretive about what they were doing. A lot of the others in the industry felt that they were going to go belly up because they couldn't make money. No one took them all that seriously in terms of their competitors. And here we are, fast forward to 2023, and they are the great disruptor. So it's really an accident that we got started looking at what they're doing, trying to figure out their supply chain, and trying to crack the code, so to speak.
Very cool. Love the investigative bent on that. Can you just talk about your company, MWPVL, and kind of what you're studying there, what information you're gathering on various companies, and who your main clients are?
Sure. The work that we do is really threefold. One is we do these strategic studies to help retailers, e-commerce companies, manufacturers, and so forth figure out what their logistics and supply chain footprint should look like. Where should they be located? How big should the facilities be? Should they be automated, etc.? And then we get right into the nuts and bolts of designing the insides of those buildings down to the inch. And some of these buildings have, thousands of people working in them, so they're like miniature cities. And there's lots of opportunity to optimize the way that they function. And we do a lot of work in the grocery sector as far as that goes, and then outside of that as well. And then we also do technology consulting, either by way of helping people figure out robotics, automation, and then the software systems that run their business. So that's the work that we do as a company. And, we track Amazon, but we also track Walmart, Target. We track everybody in the grocery sector as well, the top 75 grocery retailers in North America, and UPS, FedEx, a number of other companies that we keep our finger on the pulse of just so we understand their supply chain strategy.
You're definitely attracting their attention, I can tell you that much, because they definitely pay attention to the information you're digging up. And I can certainly relate with some of the stuff that I've covered for not necessarily those companies, but other ones in the food delivery space, which is also equally secretive. I'd love for you to just, I know you mentioned it at the beginning, around 16 central parks, but give us the high level stats about US versus worldwide square footage. What is the Whole Foods footprint? What's the Amazon Fresh footprint? What's the Amazon Go footprint? So retail versus, kind of online store warehouses.
Okay, there's, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into there, but...
Just high level.
High level, okay, let me try and find my backup data there to help me out, because I've got to have my cheat sheet in front of me. Here we go. USA, we'll focus on that, 410 million square feet at ground level. If you include mezzanines, we're talking 580 million square feet that are currently active, and those line pretty closely to the 10K statements that Amazon produces. There's 1,286 buildings that are operating.
Wow.
That includes all fulfillment centers and logistics facilities.
Hmm.
So we have to remember that a good number of these buildings have nothing to do with picking and packing your order.
Right.
They have everything to do with delivering it. So we see about a 29% increase forthcoming over the next few years in terms of the footprint. So at ground level, about another 80 million square feet that we're aware of that are forthcoming
Wow.
between now and, say, 2025. That number will probably be scaled back as as you're well aware, they're in the process of canceling a lot of projects that they had in their pipeline. So in the fulfillment center space, the big ones that we all see and hear about are the small sortable fulfillment centers. Those are the ones with the robotics that bring the goods to the pickers. They operate 101 of those buildings, with another 34 that we believe are on the way. And then they also operate these 40-foot high buildings that are more conventional, standard 40-foot tall buildings that do all the heavy, bulky type merchandise that doesn't ride easily on a conveyor. There's 109 of those. So between those two categories, you're right off the bat, you're at 180 million square feet at ground level and roughly about 330 million square feet if you include the mezzanines. Now, in addition to that, there's specialty fulfillment centers that do specific product lines. There's what's called the sub-same-day fulfillment center, which provides a 5-hour service level. It combines the concept of a fulfillment center and a delivery station under one roof. They have supplemental warehouses that they use only during peak season for overflow inventory. They've got returns processing centers. They've got fresh distribution centers. There's 12 Whole Foods grocery distribution centers that we're aware of. They're not big. They're like 100,000 square feet apiece, and they tend to do things like seafood or produce. They're not what you would normally think of as a large grocery distribution center. And then they have about 79 of these Prime Now hubs, which they call Amazon Fresh. That's not the stores. That's that 2-hour service level inside the inner city, where they deliver with an Amazon Flex driver 2 hours after you order, kind of similar to what they do with Whole Foods. And then on the logistics side of the fence, they operate 33 of these inbound cross-dock facilities. These are buildings where imports arrive from the port. They go to these import facilities. They act as holding tanks between China and the fulfillment center network. And the fulfillment center network draws upon those facilities and reorders from them. So they don't serve the public. They just replenish the fulfillment centers within the Amazon network. And then you have sortation centers. There's 107 of those. That's the primary sort. Your packages depart the fulfillment center. They go there. They get sorted down to the zip code level. They get shipped to either the post office or to a delivery station that's operated by Amazon. Right now, we think there's 526 delivery stations in the U.S., focused primarily on urban and suburban markets for small packages, and then another 130 delivery stations focused on heavy, bulky products. Think of treadmills or TV sets or those kind of things. We also know of about 24 airport hubs. They actually operate from over 50 airports in America, but we know of 24 airport hubs that they sort packages at the airport as well. And then they operate a couple of manufacturing facilities for the robots. So all told, 1,286 buildings. It's quite impressive given that this has been built up. You think about it, 410 million square feet has been built up since the early 90s. To put that into perspective, you take a company like Walmart, which is the largest food retailer in America, and the largest retailer, period. I mean, they operate just over 150 million square feet, which has been developed over the last 50 years. So this 410 million square feet, which is actually 580 million if you include mezzanines, that's been built in a period of 25 years as compared to the 150 million that Walmart's built over the last 50 years. So it's a heck of a story. And along the way too, I mean, we believe Amazon's now shipping more package volume domestically for B2C packages than UPS. And UPS is, I guess it's about a 113-year-old company, maybe more. And Amazon has surpassed UPS, we believe, in 2022 in terms of small package volume in the United States. So that project of building out their own logistics capabilities really kickstarted in 2014. And just between 2014 and today, they've gone from ground zero to, we think, around 5.9 billion packages that they deliver themselves, which exceeds the total quantity of small packages that UPS is delivering in the U.S. So all of this has been done in a very short period of time. It's quite an incredible story.
Astonishing. I would love for you to also talk a little bit about like the number of physical stores with regards to groceries. So let's talk about, I guess, grocery convenience. So Amazon Go, Amazon Fresh, and Whole Foods. How big are those networks just by number of stores? And let's
we
just
don't
say
track the
U.S.
square footage per se for all of these stores, but I'll give you what the data is that we have right now. You probably know they closed their 4-star and their bookstores last year as a corrective measure, and then I guess that was just a lab experiment that didn't work out. They pulled the plug on it. They've got 2 fashion stores in the U.S. that we're aware of. 46 of the new Amazon Fresh stores that have been underway since roughly about 2020. We know of another 26 stores that are somewhere in the pipeline of being opened up this year. So all told, the 46 stores we believe add up to about 1.6 million square feet. Typical profile of those stores is around 35,000 square feet. That's in the U.S. In the UK, they operate 19 stores, roughly about 475,000 square feet. Now in the UK, they just last week, or this week I think it was, closed their first Amazon Fresh store, not even 2 years after they opened it. So there's some corrective things going on the retail side. We're hearing about store delays, possible closures and things of that nature on the food side. So it's a kind of an uncertain time period right now. The Amazon Go stores, we only know of about 31 that are active, roughly 67,000 square feet total. They're smaller footprint, dash in, grab something, dash out. Whole Foods, we track 534 stores right now, and we don't know the total square footage of that, or we haven't got that yet in our database. We're still working on that.
And those are all in the U.S.?
Those are, yeah, they operate in Canada as well. In Canada, they have 14 stores.
Fascinating. I think, people definitely underestimate, just how big their food presence is when you include Whole Foods and all kind of the dark infrastructure when it comes to the last mile delivery of food.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I tell people when I do, conference calls and things of this nature is we work with grocery companies that do 15 billion in sales or more, but in a very tight geography, right? So they would have that same sales volume coming out of a market region that might have a circumference of 300-400 miles. And the benefit of having a regional presence like that is that you can set up distribution centers. The trucks go out 250 miles. They come home at the end of the day. You can do all your own buying. You can get lowest cost of goods because everything's moving truckload volumes, and you've got total control over your supply chain. You only outsource to wholesalers those really slow-moving specialty items that you just don't have room for in your distribution centers, and you don't have the purchasing power to bring it in efficiently. So you rely on partners like KeHE Foods and UNFI to purchase that for you, because they can purchase in larger quantities, and then you cross-stock that through your distribution center on the way to the store. And with Whole Foods now, you've got a $15 billion retailer that's spread out nationwide. And the big challenge they've got is they only have concentration of stores in a handful of markets where it would make sense for them to consider self-distribution. So they are very heavily reliant on wholesalers like UNFI and Spartan Nash to get goods to the stores, and they're also very heavily reliant on direct store deliveries from local merchants, which I've always argued is probably the most expensive and least successful supply chain out there in the food industry, because fill rates are never as good as what they can be if you bring them through your own distribution center. So they don't benefit from, Whole Foods doesn't benefit from the synergy that most retailers have, like Walmart, for example, um, because Walmart is completely self-sustained, right? Walmart moves about 85% of their cost of goods through their own distribution centers, what you actually pick up on the store shelf. And Walmart grew in the 1990s, using a leapfrog approach where they started out with one distribution center that did food. They converted all the stores in that market region to become super centers that could handle general merchandise and food. They conquered that area, and then they leapfrog to the next area, 250 miles away, and they did it all over again. And they did that 42 times over the course of the decade, and that's how they grew up to be an efficient grocery retailer. And obviously today they're the largest retailer in the country for food. But they did it in a way that enabled them to make the maximum margin out of the food side of the business. And as you know, Matt, I mean, the good guys make 2% in this business, so it's a tough labor-intensive industry to get into. And unfortunately, Whole Foods, being a national retailer with low concentration of stores in any one given market, it's more difficult for them to become self-distributing. There are we think about 4 to 7 markets they could potentially set themselves up with automated distribution centers, that kind of thing. But there's still quite a few stores that, it doesn't make sense for them to set up their own distribution centers.
It makes me think of this, like, when you talk about the 2%, net margins that grocers make, 2 to 3% from some of the best names out there. You think about this quote of for Jeff Bezos famously said, "Your margin is our opportunity." I think, and that's not a lot of margin to suck out of a traditional system, right. Especially if you're not going to be inventing anything on the distribution side of things. So I guess I'd love for you to spend some time talking about the overarching strategy in this grocery and convenience space. I mean, Amazon clearly has given up on the restaurant space, but they have seemed to, focused in on food as kind of this last pillar. How does it fit into their core e-commerce business? And, what do you think they've learned from Whole Foods? And how much are they willing to invest in expanding?
Boy, that's a tough question right now at this very specific point in time. The Q4 results coming out, and the last year has been austerity measures, right? Cutbacks in every possible area of the business where they can cut back. They're trying to restore health to the income statement, which means all initiatives that require capital and generate low return are likely being put on the back burner or just outright being canceled. So that means geographical expansion globally into developing markets. That means experimental projects that might be 10 years in the making before they generate any possible benefit for the shareholder. And then you have to look at food and say, well, this is a massive undertaking. It's going to take a tremendous amount of capital to actually become a proficient food retailer, not only in terms of retail store build out, because you have to remember the technology for this cashierless store. It's not free. It's very, very expensive to deploy. And so setting up a store and then unplugging it means you're writing off a lot of non-depreciated assets unless you can reutilize that technology in another store. So it's a big risk to go out and spend billions of dollars to set yourself up as a food retailer, especially if you think Andy Jassy comes from AWS, right? And AWS generates, call it a 35%, rate of return, a margin. And here we're talking about a 2% business that's going to create massive hunger for capital. And so if I was in his position, I'd be really skeptical about plunging into this until such time that the income statement is back in healthy condition. So I would think for the next short while, maybe the next year or two, we're not going to see too much in the way of food expansion for Amazon. So just preface everything I'm saying there by saying I think they're going to really cool off on this one. You've got a different market dynamic here than what you have with retail and e-commerce. When they got into e-commerce as a company, it was fertile ground. I mean, no one had really gone there in any organized way. and they were able to go into a market area that was completely untapped. The food industry today, when Amazon bought Whole Foods back 5 years ago, that was the alarm bell that went off in the food industry, and every CEO went into the war room with his team and said, how are we going to respond to this? Online's coming, and no one really has a good handle on how big it's going to get, right? Is it going to stop at 10%? Is it going to plow forward and get to 40%? Is it going to depend on the regional market that we're serving? Urban centers more than, the Midwest, for example. What are the dynamics? No one has a good handle on this right now. And so companies are watching very carefully what their competitors are doing and how much they're investing to become proficient in this area. And so over the last 5 years, you've seen companies like Walmart and Kroger invest, significant amounts of capital to maintain a dominance in the grocery industry and to defend their market share. And it's not as though it's not as though you're going into virgin country here. Now you're up against these 900-pound gorillas that have really done an excellent job of developing core competencies in the online grocery trade. And so you're pushing water uphill on this one. And there's no guarantee you'll be successful at all. People who have Amazon Prime memberships might go and shop at an Amazon Fresh store, but the variety of products they carry in these stores is not earth-shattering. It's not something radically new relative to what you can buy in any other supermarket. And, they still haven't really nailed the formula as far as I can tell from the pictures I'm seeing relative to the in-stock positions in the stores. I think there's still a lot of learning they have to go through before they become good at it. I don't know how much of that Whole Foods talent's been brought over to the Amazon Fresh side of the business from a purchasing and inventory management perspective, or if they've just kept them completely apart. I would hope they cross-fertilize that knowledge. But at this point, from what I've seen from the Amazon Fresh stores and the photos I've picked up on, I'm kind of stunned actually at the in-stock position photos I've been seeing. Bare shelves you don't sell from an empty basket. So all this to say that, I think we're going to see really slow progress in this area for the food side of the business. I think it's going to generate low returns, demand high capital, which is everything they don't need right now. I mean, right now what they need, what investors are looking for, and we have to remember their stock price is half of what it used to be. What investors want to be able to count on is an increasing return on investor capital going forward. And if they're going to get into new areas of business or where the capital requirement is huge, the return is small, that's counterintuitive to me. So, not sure if I answered your question, Matt, but that's kind of it's a big topic.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and obviously there's been surcharges that they just announced where if you spend less than $50 on Amazon Fresh, you got to pay $9.95 for the delivery fee, and that goes down as you get up to, you have to spend over $150 to get free fresh delivery, and it used to be $35. And
right.
So it's definitely a more rational world.
Kudos to whoever made that decision. I work with enough of these guys to know that the real cost of doing a last mile delivery runs anywhere from $8 to $12 on average. Let's say it's $10 is a good number to work with. That's not free money, and when you think about a $100 order generating $2 of profit, $10 of delivery fee is a big number if the customer's not paying for it. So, it had to happen, right? They did it with Whole Foods going back a year ago, and it was long overdue. You can't expect anyone to make money at food if they're doing free delivery on $35 orders. That's just shooting yourself in the foot every time you generate a sale.
Amazon obviously has a huge advertising business. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's pure profit, and it's a very nice complement to their business. I'm wondering how much of all of this investment is in service of that potential opportunity to shift all this trade spend dollars and all these slotting fees from physical shelves to digital.
It's a topic that's important, Matt. I'm not the expert in this area, right? Because you're talking about marketing trade funds, and manufacturers only have so many trade fund dollars that they can part with, whether it's Amazon or Walmart or anybody else. So they set that number up by customer, and then, regardless of where it flows, what channel, there's a limit to what they can hand over. They have to make their shareholders happy too. So if they're going to spend money advertising to get their product highlighted on Amazon, that's, with another vendor, that might be, some type of a scan-based fund or something else, that takes place at the point of sale. So the market in this area for advertising and promotional funding it's not my core competency. I really can't talk too much about it. Sorry.
Totally fair. No, yeah. Totally fair. And then you also mentioned, Walmart and Kroger in making their own investments that Amazon's obviously going to have to compete with. So Kroger has Ocado, and obviously they're merging with Albertsons, which has been working with Takeoff. They just launched their 10th micro-fulfillment center there. 2 different strategies. And then you have Walmart, which is, bought a competitor to Takeoff called Alert Innovation that's doing micro-fulfillment centers from within the super centers, and maybe they'll also use it in some of their distribution centers. But I'm curious kind of how you think these retail, tech-enabled retailers now, if you will, are going to compete against someone who's pure play like Amazon.
Well, when you sit down with these companies and you start discussing all of the different options that are available to tackle the online world, you have the range from what Kroger is doing with Ocado, where you set up these mega automated facilities with a hub and spoke strategy. So take, for example, the one they've set up in Dallas. What you're doing is you're pooling the maximum number of e-commerce orders through an automated building that costs, call it $150 million to set up, maybe more. And then what you're doing is you're loading up truckloads that bring all of those order totes to not only the Dallas market, but as far away as Oklahoma City. So you spoke out to other metro markets. Then you break down those orders at that local market at a hub location, and then you do the last mile delivery from there. So I think they'll have a hub in Oklahoma City where they'll sort all the totes out and go and execute on that last mile delivery within that market. The underlying premise here is that most of the orders are going to get delivered over the course of next day. You can't execute this strategy with a 2-hour or same-day delivery to any great extent unless the customer happens to live in the backyard of the Ocado distribution center. Then you can get there quickly. But for the most part, when you're trying to cover a radius of a few hundred miles, you're talking about next-day delivery. So you're after the customer that is really bulking up, and they're giving you that $160 order. They're, for the next month, maybe they're loading up on goods, and you've got a refrigerated cold chain from soup to nuts that takes all the products. It's in a refrigerated truck by the time it arrives at the customer's doorstep. There's a Kroger driver with a uniform on that delivers the order to the customer, and there's a relationship that gets established with the customer. The Kroger logo is on the side of the truck. There's a lot of really good things about the way they're doing it, including the respect for the cold chain. But a lot of other companies are looking at that strategy and saying, that's not for us. We want to be fast. Because if we're not within the next 2 hours of when the customer places their order, somebody else will be, and they'll beat us to that customer because of their capability with speed. And so those smaller orders that go for, let's say, $50 to $100, those are the ones where customers want speed, especially in places like New York City. We've got strong penetration from a company like Instacart going out and doing these 2-hour deliveries of groceries to customers. Smaller orders, but fast service. And so you've got that on the other end of the spectrum where the only solution is to pick from store, so to speak, or to have a micro-fulfillment in the store, micro-fulfillment center. Now the challenge with the micro-fulfillment center is most of these stores were not built with the proper height to support a halfway decent automation deployment. You're talking about clear heights oftentimes between 12 and 18 feet, and that's not really all that suitable for automation. You can do it, but you're not. And the other thing is these stores don't have a lot of square feet to hand over to, this automated system that's going to knock out 10,000 square feet from their footprint. Store managers don't want it. You got all this car traffic that's going to get generated for the delivery function. The parking lot might be limited, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not always a perfect fit to put an MFC into a store. So what I'm seeing now, a lot of companies starting to explore is more of the dark store concept. So don't try to shoehorn this thing into the retail footprint, but go out and find perhaps in a mall somewhere, right next to the grocery store, for example, a footprint that we can set up that's closed off to the public, and we can operate a dark store in there, be it manual. Maybe we start out manual, then we progress over to automation over time. But at least that way all of the shopping traffic is out of the store, and you're not overcrowding the in-store shopper with the online shopper. So there's people trying that flavor. And then there's other people like Ahold, where they've set themselves up with automation in South Philadelphia, with a low-cost industrial building that they put an expensive automation system in just to service that 6 million population that's sitting in Philly. Right. Not only to replenish the stores, or not only to send, if somebody who happens to go to a giant food store in Philadelphia and they place an online order, they can pick it centrally in this automated warehouse and then transfer that order tote over to the local store where the customer can pick up, or from the local store there can be a delivery function. But you're also adding new customers. You're generating new sales because you're shipping to people that don't live near a giant food store. And that's kind of the formula that I really like, is where you set up in each urban market, not a CFC, not an MFC, I call it an EFC, like an e-commerce fulfillment center that's designed to service the entirety of that metro market. Let's call it, 2, 3, 4, 5 million people. And you support not only the existing stores in that market that you already operate, but you also generate new sales from customers that don't happen to live conveniently close to those existing stores. And that EFC model is one that Ahold's grabbed onto, and I like that one quite a bit myself. But you need enough magnitude in terms of order volume to justify that type of automation investment, because it's not inexpensive, right? That's a lot of capital that's needed to put one of those things up.
And that would be a same-day fulfillment?
Yeah, it could be a combination of same day and next day, but it's intended to be a same day fulfillment, because your travel distance is really that metro market area, and that's really where that's the dividing line, right? Like, how far do you want to travel with that order tote? If you start getting too long in the tooth there, then you have to make it a next day proposition.
So how do you, obviously we saw the rise of 15-minute delivery during the pandemic, and the idea of Ocado pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into these sheds that were massive next day operations just felt so archaic at the time, right? And now it's starting to feel maybe slightly more rational. Who knows? I don't know the numbers. But I guess, how important is the need for speed? How much is Amazon going to be investing in this same day model for kind of all the non-perishable items? And kind of how important is the SLA going to be for Amazon Fresh and Whole Foods delivery, you think?
Well, same day is a new fulfillment center type that Amazon has they just started launching that around 2020. So these buildings, think of them as being about 170,000 square feet. They've got, a fulfillment center and a delivery station under one roof. They don't do refrigerated, to my knowledge. They're pretty much an ambient service offering. And the goods-to-person technology they have with the Kiva solution that they bought, that's efficient. People pick, pack, and ship the order, and if it's $35 or more, it's free delivery. But they also service non-food items out of these buildings, and they could even be big, bulky ticket items that they can't automate easily. But the idea is they pick it goes down a conveyor over to a dock door, and an Amazon Flex driver shows up to pick it up, and with their own car. So the goods end up going into the trunk of the car, and away they go. And you could potentially set this concept up with perishables. Now, the issue with perishables is that you can only do about 2 or 3 orders with each outbound trip. You yourself know this, right? If you've got chicken breast and ice cream sitting in the back of your trunk, it's non-refrigerated. Yeah. You can't go out for 8 hours. and make a whole slew of deliveries. You can maybe make a run with 2 or 3 stops, then you got to go back and get your next load, right? Your next orders. Otherwise, you get risks with food safety. So this whole sub same day thing is really top 100,000 ambient SKUs that sell, the ones that move the most order lines, positioned in such a way that anybody within a 45-minute drive radius can get their order within 5 hours. And, it cuts out a lot of the moving parts that take place in the normal supply chain. So in the normal supply chain, Amazon has to go fulfillment center to sortation center to delivery station to your door. And that's multiple middle mile touch points, multiple loads and unloads and handprints going on every single package. And this puts it all together under one roof. You pick it, you get it in the car. And the downside is that the Amazon Flex driver is being used as opposed to a van. So when you send a van out with 200 packages for a 10-hour day, that last mile delivery function is costing $1.75. When you send out an Amazon Flex driver with 30, 40 packages and he's got a minimum 4-hour block, package cost could be around $3.30. So that last mile delivery function ends up being twice as expensive, even though you've cut out a lot of the expense even before you start the last mile delivery function. So we believe that sub same day is that faster service level is there's a price to pay for that. It's more expensive than doing the normal 2-day or even next day process.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I went undercover in San Diego. I remember I got a very early morning shift and was able to pick up a decent amount of packages, but obviously my trunk was not as big as a large van, and there was been no way I could have put any perishables in there because I was driving for a couple hours. There was no time for any bathroom breaks or anything. It was pretty insane. I had to keep scanning in all the packages in the back of my trunk to figure out which one belonged where, and little packages fell into nooks and crannies in my back seat. It was quite comical, and I felt like the Santa Claus delivery guy. Everyone getting surprised that their orders were coming so quickly. But do you think Amazon's doubling down on this? Are they pausing it? And then maybe you can talk a little bit about the 7 stores that they're stalling on the fresh side. At least that's what the information was reporting. How long is it going to take for them to grow into the capacity that they built in the last 2 years?
Oof. If I knew that one, I'd be a rich man. I'll tell you what, I think they're pausing right now because of the economic conditions that the business is undergoing. We see, I think personally, it's just an opinion, that, they have over $20 billion of expenses they've got to trim from the retail side of the business, both in North America and rest of the world. The rest of the world is hemorrhaging pretty badly relative to North America. The rest of the world represents about a third or 30% of the overall retail business, but they're losing more money than North America, and that's a whole other topic. But in North America, they've got, call it, $10 billion to cut in order to restore health. So either you cut expenses or you drive more revenue through the fulfillment system in order to restore health to the income statement, with the objective, getting that stock price back up to where it was, at its peak when it was over $1 trillion. And the food side of things, I think it's a long-term play, and it's, as I mentioned earlier, very capital intensive, with no guarantees of success, or certainly no guarantees of high margins. The idea with the food side of things has always been, if I can get people to order more from Amazon, there'll be a higher propensity to justify buying the Amazon Prime membership, the $129. And that's money that goes straight to the bottom line, right? So you want more members, period. Just like Costco and any other membership program, the more members, the better. And so food, by having a comprehensive food offering, the idea is to increase the membership. But also you want people to say, you know what, while I'm ordering this food order, let me just toss in this general merchandise item while I'm at it. And they stop shopping around. They just always go to Amazon for everything. And so they're not going to try to beat the system or game the system looking for the best price. They just shop at Amazon, period. And so you're upselling on your general merchandise product line because now you're offering not just general merchandise, but food. And the more you can offer, the better. So you sell more from either side of the fence, food or general merchandise, because you've got this twin pillar that you're offering. That's the rationale behind doing this. I don't think anybody is they're smart people over there at Amazon. They know very well what they're getting into. So I think what's going to happen is, Andy Jassy's got a tough job. He stepped into the company into his role at the worst possible time, and as Bezos stepped aside and Jassy stepped in, all the bad news started hitting, and he's just got so much on his plate to please the investor community right now, and to get the return on capital back to where it needs to be. I can't see them making any huge investments on the food side of the business, be it in the retail front or on the back-end distribution centers for quite some time. And I'm going to suggest it's going to take them close to 5 to 6 quarters to get any semblance of health back to the return on investor capital, because you can't just, it's a freight train going down the tracks. You can't just stop on a dime. There's a lot of hard work that needs to be done to cut expenses and make decisions that are painful, and jobs are at stake, and the reputation of the firm is at stake, etc. And you got to be careful not to flood the company with one-time expenses that are a direct result of closing business operations. You want to minimize that impact because it actually has the reverse effect of worsening your income statement, because let's say you have $100 million of assets that you have to write off in a given quarter. That's not healthy for the income statement. So, all these things said, I think food is they're going to hit the pause button. That's the bottom line. I think it's going to be slow going in terms of new fresh store openings, and we won't really see any momentum here until, I'm going to suggest, 2025, 2026.
Do you think there's any lessons learned? I mean, you mentioned that the rest of the world isn't doing as well from like the online and physical retail side of things. And is there any lessons learned is there anything in particular about the closure of the Amazon Fresh store in the UK? And there was news even before this about them canceling projects, I recall, and struggling there. But is it something about the competition there, or is there something about the penetration there that was specific to that market that you think made that more tough, or are we just seeing something just like a more brutal economic position in that part of the world that could potentially be the future here? I guess how does that somehow foreshadow what could be next here?
Tough to say. It's they opened up a new store the same week they closed one, right? Over in Croydon, they opened up one, and so it's hard to say. It's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde situation going on here. Maybe it was just that one store wasn't making money, and people weren't going there, or it was just a bad location, or a bad decision was made, and it was a one-off. We have to wait and see on this one, Matt. That's the truth. I mean, if we see, like the 4-star and the bookstores, they just pull the plug in one fell swoop, and I honestly don't see that happening. I think they're going to stay the course and try to make this thing work and learn, because anytime you're opening up grocery stores, you got to learn as you go along how to make it successful. What does that local market want? And they'll get better at it over time, especially if they hire the right people. But I don't honestly think, with the stores they're running right now, that there's going to be an unplugging. I think that might have been a one-off. Maybe there'll be a couple more one-offs before it's all said and done. I think it's really, like I say, I think this is just hit the pause button. Don't put any more money into it for now. We got too many other things to focus on, including, don't put too much more money into this self-checkout technology. They've been moving people out of that, the drones, all these other areas where they had lab experiments going that weren't generating returns. They're pulling the plug in a lot of different areas. So I wouldn't read too much into the UK store closure. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I could be very wrong about that one.
Right. Yeah, people are very loyal there to their private label, the Morrisons and
And
those
it's a
kind of
market
companies.
that's in tough shape right now. I mean, my
Yeah,
daughter's over there, inflation's running rampant.
yeah,
There's strikes happening all over the place. The train
right,
system, the post office, and so on. They're in tough shape right now. They're going through tough times.
right. Yeah, I mean, so being in LA, I've had the pleasure of, seeing a lot of these stores. I scratch my head sometimes because a lot of it feels experimental. It's unclear to see, are other stores going to start buying just walkout technology? Is Amazon going to start putting this into all of its 500 Whole Foods stores? Are people actually enjoying this experience? Is there a high NPS score? Because I've seen a lot of people just sidestep it altogether and just kind of go through the third lane where you don't have to opt into the, cameras following you around in the store. So I'm curious, how differentiated do you think this makes Amazon? Is it actually something that works? I saw the Starbucks store in New York, and it was very confusing to me. They had a partnership going with Amazon Go, and I think they might have two of those stores. But
Hmm.
where do you think this goes long term? How important is the Just Walk Out technology? And are Amazon Fresh stores actually designed for humans to shop, or is it just designed for store shoppers to pick groceries?
Okay. The question is this revolutionary or is this a technology that's a flash in the pan? I think that if I interpret what you're saying. So like the barcode came along, right, back in the 70s or 80s, and next thing you know, there was this massive revolutionary improvement at the cash registers in terms of the time it took to process an order. And life got better and became a de facto standard technology. Will the entire world go to this cashierless type technology, and we're just going through the tip of the iceberg right now? My opinion is probably not. I think the cost of the technology and the difficulty implementing it is just too much to overcome to make it something that everybody will buy into. I remember the days when RFID came out, for example, RFID tags. Walmart mandated that every single retail unit have an RFID tag on it. The whole world went into a tiz trying to make this happen, and it just ended up, they pulled the plug on it. You can't take an item that costs $4 and put a $1 tag on it, for example. It just doesn't make economic sense. And so if you've got a store, a small square foot store, and it costs $1 million or more to plug in all this technology that's not bulletproof, you have to remember there's things that can break that system, and people will figure that out. It's not perfect technology. They've spent years to try to perfect it. I was reading an article somewhere where they were talking about a father walks in with his daughter on his shoulders, and they spent hundreds, thousands of hours trying to figure out how to work around that problem, because the cameras and everything have to recognize the shopper, and there's just a lot of human things that can go wrong with this technology. So I think this might just be an Amazon thing that, it'll be exciting for the first little while, and then eventually it will peter out. I don't think it's going to catch on like wildfire across the rest of the world, and I don't think it's going to become an AWS for retail. Not certainly not in my lifetime. Maybe in another 20, 30 years, people will start to figure out. I mean, look, already I was reading about a company in France where walk in, shop to your heart's content, load up your basket, go home. They'll deliver it to your doorstep. Okay, so they don't need cashierless technology. They'll ring up the bill, they'll bring it to your doorstep. Okay, so the labor's still there, but the convenience factor's been solved without all that, technology being deployed at every single SKU. And, you've got all kinds of other things, like at the butcher counter, you've got to have a face-to-face service, and maybe you're ordering a special cake or something. And there's lots of places where you just can't really use that technology either. And think about it, more and more of these stores, now the good ones are, they have in-store buffets, and they have other ways of attracting customers to the store other than just buying a can of green beans. And
Yep.
So, I think there's limitations to everything, and this is one of those technologies that I don't think is going to make huge traction.
Yeah, I saw some of those limitations firsthand. The salad bar pricing is flat. There's no like small, medium, large size. There's just one size fits all.
Yeah.
The butcher counter, you have to take a picture of you as they essentially scan the barcode of whatever it is the weight is of the cheese or the meat that you bought. So they've definitely figured out a way to skate around it, but they can't offer, everything is one size fits all pricing. There's no different sizes on the Slurpees at the Go store. There's no different sizes on the coffees at that store either. So they've had to really shoehorn it.
Mind if I ask a question, Matt? What was how did the shelves look when you walked into the store?
My friend Frank Beard from Standard AI and I joke about this, but he kind of coined the term large vending machines. Right. In the Go stores, it feels like a large vending machine because everything has to be slotted where it's supposed to go. And if it runs out of stock and you didn't reorder it, well, you can't put any other inventory there. You'd have to retrain the system on the new SKU that you slot in there. So that's been more the case at Go when I've seen about a quarter of the inventory just completely gone off the shelf. At fresh stores, I haven't seen it as much, but it's definitely there. And it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb because there's just nothing, you can't re-merchandise that quickly. There's nobody on the floor that can just act quickly.
Got it. Yeah. Because the photos I've seen from different corners of the country have really looked as though there's an inventory management problem going on, that they don't have enough experience buying, or maybe the local vendors that are supplying the store only show up once a week, or who knows what, and it's just a lot of bare shelves, and it's been pretty concerning actually, because if customers go in there 1, 2, 3 times, and half the time they're looking for something they can't get it, they give up, they go where they can buy it.
Right, and you would think that Amazon, of all people, of all companies, would have AI that would be auto replenishing these shelves, but who knows what's actually going on behind the hood. There's also been rumors, recently, someone was talking about an auto store deployment with Amazon, potentially out of a dark store in Long Island. I'm just kind of curious, like, at what point where do you think Amazon is right now with its deliveries from the fresh stores? And like, at what point would a typical store be looking at automation? Like, how many orders a delivery per day from a store do you need to be at in order to even think about getting one of these systems?
Okay. Been toying with that one quite a bit. I'm working on working with several grocery companies right now to figure out all these issues. What are the economics of the automation? So let's say the automation solution starts at around $5 million, and then you've got an into perpetuity cost of $250,000 a year to fund the maintenance, parts, consumables associated to that automation system. And you're going to get a better productivity rate out of it because you don't have people wandering around a store taking 70 seconds to pick an item. Now you can do it in, call it 7 to 10 seconds. So there's a labor savings. But you can't do every single item in the automation system, right? Some of them aren't capable of doing frozen, for example. Or there's items that just don't fit in the automation physically because of the size or weight, or. So you end up kicking out a bunch of stuff and doing 70%, let's say, of the order lines from the automation. 30% remain manual. And when you do all the math and you look at the labor bill before and after, and you study the cost per order, to my estimation, you want to be well above 5,000 orders a week to start considering automation for a particular store. In other words, an MFC. And the more the better. So if you're into the 7 to 10,000 range, the ability to cost justify the technology gets better. You also have to consider the wage rates that you're paying for people to work in the store. So if your fully loaded wage rate is down at $15, $16, $17 an hour versus $22, $23, $24, you end up with a much healthier story, obviously, as the wage rates go up. So each business is a little bit different. But I'd say I wouldn't even look at automation if I was below 5,000 a week. I think it's money that's not well spent.
And just real quickly on that topic, do you think that the companies that are building these dark stores are cannibalizing their in-store sales by by essentially, spinning off all their delivery into a separate store, or is there enough new customers they can attract by virtue of being somewhere else that makes up for that?
If we're talking about an MFC that's positioned inside of a retail store, and you look at the geography of who's ordering from that store, and you divide up the orders that would be associated to customers within a certain small radius of the store that would normally shop at the store, that would truly be cannibalizing, and then everything else would be new sales, because what I think you'll find is just it's really specific to each market that you're looking at. The bigger the city, the higher the density of the population, the further away you can go, and therefore you're going to pick up a lot of new sales with some type of an in-store online offering. If you're talking about a suburban environment where the density drops, most of the people that are going to be ordering from that store live there already and are familiar with that store, and the home delivery and the online shopping and all of that's a convenience for them. Either they're going to pick up at store or have it delivered within a time window when they're home. So in a sense, that's pure cannibalization. The way that the retailer looks at it is not so much that it's a cannibalization, but it's a defense of their market share. So by offering this service and convenience, they're keeping an existing customer happy, so they don't defect to the guy who does offer it if they don't, right? So either way, I think the cannibalization issue, it's there, it's real. Maybe it's half the volume in an urban high-density market, and it's all the volume in a suburban market. So you really have to kind of go to that next level of detail to answer that one.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you're curious to get a first-hand look at the cutting edge of food and tech, check out HNGRY.tv. That's Hungry with no U, where you can join in on live conversations like these or sign up for the free weekly newsletter.